Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Center for Political Innovation's live conference here. My name is Max the Sax. You were just hearing a selection of pieces I decided to play tonight in light of our speakers, in light of the community we are building here. The first piece was called The Sacred War. It was a Soviet song sung during World War II, which represented the will of the Soviet people to resist the fascist invader. The second song was Harama Valley, which has a special place in my heart as an American, as it represented the Abraham Lincoln Brigade over in Spain fighting against the Francoist fascists. And I think it represents a lot of the melancholy a lot of leftists feel nowadays with the current situation we're in with the pandemic, the current state of world affairs, and a lot of things that are going on. The third song was Venceremos, which is a popular Chilean leftist song that was sung during the presidency of Salvador Allende. And I think it represents the dual side to the melancholy that a lot of leftists feel, the hope, the spirit, the enthusiasm of Marxism-Leninism in the age of multipolarity and building a new future. And the fourth song, well, it's the Internationale. If you're a leftist, you probably know the Internationale. It's kind of the universal anthem of socialism, and it's been that way for centuries, and I don't see why that's going to cease. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremonies. He's a political correspondent, a journalist, and an author, Caleb Maupin.
Well, thank you for that rousing opening performance. I really appreciated that. Max the Sax has been doing a lot of great organizing with Students and Youth for a New America in the Beltway, DC area. So we want to thank him for that lovely musical performance. That was just a great way to start this broadcast. The theme tonight is building communities of solidarity. And so much is happening in the country. So many people are suffering, whether it's the unemployed, whether it's the people left without electricity, without proper water, whether it's people struggling in communities that have been affected by police brutality and historic injustices. There's so much that we're going to talk on and touch on tonight. There'll be some cultural performances, there'll be some presentations and speakers. So I'm very excited to see what is coming. So I want everyone to just stretch a little bit, take a few deep breaths. We're going to hear some great presentations and cultural performances tonight. We're going to have a great Q&A segment to end it. We're going to hear about situations here in the United States as well as around the world and how they are all connected. I really want to thank you all for participating. I want to encourage everyone who is watching right now to tweet this out, put this on Facebook, on Reddit, put this on your Twitter, put this on your Instagram, everywhere that people are watching videos and engaging with revolutionary ideas. We want these voices to be heard. Some very dynamic speakers are going to present. I'm very, very excited about what we've got coming up. So our first speaker tonight is David Cedillo. And David Cedillo is an organizer in San Angelo, Texas. And Texas, as we all saw, was the epicenter of the latest meltdown of the crumbling infrastructure of the United States. While the government of the United States is focused on bombing and destroying people in other countries, basic things like power plants and water treatment facilities and roads are not getting taken care of. And the whole country saw what happened in Texas, just like the whole country saw what happened in Puerto Rico. How this island that was basically functions as a colony of the United States. This U.S. territory was left with electricity for 11 months. So now, in Texas, where many working class people of different nationalities have struggled and suffered amid a weather disaster that led to a public health crisis and the loss of electricity. David Cedillo and his comrades in San Angelo Solidarity have been doing great community work, aiding people in their community, but also engaging in socialist education. So David Cedillo is going to be our first speaker. So I want to thank him for speaking for us. And here is David.
Greetings, how's it going, y'all? So, first off, I want to give y'all the setting. This all takes place in a small town of 100,000 people located in the Bible Belt of West Texas. There are no leftist organizations here of any kind. So, about a month ago, my friends and I decided to start one of our own. We are San Angelo Solidarity, a Marxist group with the aim of organizing, educating, and raising class consciousness. Our group has grown a lot and seen a lot in the past month. We've been in our position with our water supply. We've seen a historic Arctic freeze, and these two events have taught us crucial lessons we won't soon forget. Now, to begin, I start with our water crisis story. Friday, February 5th. Citizens started to report mothball and gasoline-like smells coming from their tap water. The city mostly ignored these claims. This trend increased and continued gradually until later that Monday, culminating to a head. Monday, February 8th, around 9 p.m., citizens reported hideous odors from their water, only increased. One woman vomited after drinking a glass of water, while another was rushed to the ER after bathing in the water. Acetone, benzene, and nephelamine started to contaminate the city's water supply. The entire town's water is toxic. The city government issued a do not use issue for all water in town. As Americans do, a small number of them rushed to the stores and bought literally every case of water off the shelf. So every shelf in a town of 100,000 people was empty before day 2 of the event had even begun. Day 2, February 9th. Bright and early that morning, our group sprang into action. We drove an hour away to the next town over, doing multiple trips with multiple vehicles to purchase huge quantities of bottled water. In total, we purchased and transported around 140 cases of water to elderly, disabled, and working class people in need of dire help. We started a mutual aid network for our community to help itself. We were also able to raise a bit of funds for the cause this way too. Meanwhile, the city government issued a state of emergency. They declared that the bacterial test came back showing nothing, so an unknown chemical was in the water, and proper test results wouldn't be back for another 28 to 48 hours. So late around 6:30, the city opened a single water distribution site that people could drive to. The city government also released half of the city from the do not use area, citing that only the High Plain water supply was safe because it was on a different pressurized pump system. So now, the wealthy half of town had safe water cut off from the contamination. So only the lower and largely poor half of town that was mostly Latino was affected only by the water contamination. San Angelo Solidarity affected these targeted do not drink areas heavily, focusing on getting water to elderly and disabled people who could not get out of their homes. February 10th, day 3, the city released another section from the do not use area and downgraded it to a do not consume notice. Our group continues to hand out water to these homes that are affected by this area. Day 4, February 11th. A bad situation spirals into a worse one. Texas is hit by a historic Arctic front, causing all the roads to ice over. Citizens, being from Texas, have absolute zero experience driving in ice and soak. And in disaster ensues. Large car wrecks are found everywhere. Roads are incapable of driving. Just general chaos. The city closes all water distribution sites due to these conditions. Meanwhile, our little Marxist group braves it out, driving as slow as we can, safely as we can, to surrounding towns, obtaining water and delivering it to most in need. We've mostly focused on our efforts on the disabled who couldn't leave their homes, or people who had families and didn't have transportation to drive themselves, or were too scared to drive in the extremely icy weather. And then the next day, day 5, February 12th, the ice and snow only increased. We could no longer make trips out of town to receive more water. Our only option was to hand out our remaining water and hope the roads would clear up. Thankfully, by this point, the contamination zone was reduced to a small portion of the town. By shutting off various sections of water throughout the city, they narrowed it down to a small area which the contaminants were coming from. 2 weeks later, that's where we are now. We still have no idea where these chemical leaks are coming from. All we now know is it's from one of the capitalists, or as they say, an upstanding member of the business community that is poisoning the town's water. The city already says they don't plan on pursuing criminal charges. They claim they will pursue action, but also saying they will refuse to say whoever this person is. So me being in this small West Texas town for a long time, I have absolutely zero faith that they will uphold this upstanding member of the business economy accountable. All that I'm saying is that if it was me, your average Joe that poisoned literally the water of thousands of people, I'd likely be in jail, accident or not. People here in Texas have a huge misunderstanding of what socialism is, but we're here to show them what we're about. We're upstanding members of the community who are here to lift people up. Not once in real life did we encounter someone who said, "Oh, we don't want your socialist water, brother. Me and my family would rather be dehydrated." No. Whenever you come to people and meet their needs directly, they don't see whatever propaganda they've heard about the Red Menace. They see regular working class people extending solidarity to their fellow neighbors. That type of recognition we got so fast. It was something I only could have hoped for. But now as our story continues, I'm sure you all know that Texas has been in a very rough time lately, not just my small town. The water contamination was only the beginning of our woes. The same cold front that froze all the roads only intensified. My girlfriend and I, like millions of Texans, woke up in a freezing cold house with no power. What was told to be an overnight 1 hour rolling blackout by the AAP turned into a 3-day ordeal where we, like many other Texans, had no power whatsoever. We were lucky that a group member of San Angelo Solidarity of ours still had a power and we could take ourselves and our animals there. But hundreds of thousands of Texans weren't so lucky. If you didn't live around family, if you didn't live around friends, if you didn't have any help near you, you were out of luck. I heard so many stories from people who had moved from their hometown and they found themselves forced with no option but to stay in their homes and hope the power would turn back on. Whole families forced to huddle together in a freezing cold house. Some even took measures into their own hands. In Nacogdoches, Texas, a family of 3 died to carbon monoxide poisoning after they positioned a generator too close to their home. In Garland, Texas, 2 bodies were found in another Texas home with another misplaced generator. In Houston, Texas, a mother attempted to keep her and her son out of the cold. She started the car inside of her garage. The 2 were hospitalized and later pronounced dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. Even here in my own town, a family attempted to heat their home with the grill. This resulted in another set of hospitalizations. The current death toll for the Texas crisis is 70 and still rising to this day. But what about the physical damage to homes? Because the power went out in 3/4 of the state, homes weren't being heated properly. This caused a domino effect to happen statewide. Water pipes began to bust inside of homes and underground. The bursting of the pipes, for 1, caused roofs to cave in. 2, made frigid cold houses wet and cold. 3, completely destroyed every city's water supply. To add insult to injury, some residents were struck with bills totaling over $16,000. This is what capitalism does to people in crisis. Supply and demand is used to justify gross price gouging in a time of need. The capitalists don't see this as a time to extend humanity. They see it as a time to make a profit-making opportunity. Residents whom had their homes destroyed were even bigger victims of this gross supply and demand logic. So many homes were destroyed, left so many residents searching for new places to stay. The vulture capitalists of our state saw this as another opportunity to use the logic of supply and demand to hike up housing rates to an even more ridiculous degree. Because there are just so many leaks in every state in the town under a boil of water notice, I'm not sure how long it's going to take to fix the water supply of Texas, just because it broke in so many homes. I can't imagine, but I assume it's going to be a hog while before we can all safely use our tap water. This is capitalism in the 21st century. It leaves our infrastructures crumbling. It leaves working people devastated by supply and demand dogma. Neither party is free from blame here either. When liberals laugh at Texans and say it's all y'all's fault for voting red and Texas deserves it, I find it really hard to believe how disconnected these people are. The worst hit people by this disaster were regular working class people and the homeless. During the crisis, the majority of businesses' power stayed on. The city, the private operators prioritized powers to capitalists and landowners. I remember driving down my local town seeing blocks upon blocks of houses without power, but the local liquor stores and car washes still had power. This crisis showed us where their priorities really lied. If anyone deserves the blame, it's the Texas free market libertarian ideology and the ERCOT board that doomed millions of people in this Texas's worst freeze in history. The ERCOT Commission was created by Texas in the 1970s to give some vague notion of economic sovereignty to the Texas power grid. These were just thin facades to disregard federal regulations. Texas has its own power grid completely separate from the rest of the country. This error will prove fatal for many Texans. Unlike Texas, unlike other states, we are unable to borrow electricity from neighboring states. The Texas grid is basically a small island compared to the two grids that span the left and right half of the country. This is the crisis of the free market. This is completely irrational way to run such essential services as electricity. Because the private owners weren't financially incentivized to weatherize various weather equipment to handle extreme weather events such as this one, people died. And strangely enough, the right-wingers in Texas are blaming green energy and socialism for the disaster, while in reality, green energy only makes up 10% of Texas's total power, and Texas is about the farthest thing you can get from a socialist state. As usual, conservatives are going to make ludicrous arguments, but the liberals are no better. Joe Biden and his White House only approved 101 of the 254 counties for disaster relief from FEMA in Texas. This completely baffles me. Every town under the ERCOT power grid was completely devastated in Texas. Some people didn't get it worse than other people. Everybody got it bad. Whether it's the conservatives and their free market fundamentalisms or the liberals and their half-assed way of helping in a crisis, Texans have seen that neither party has their interests at heart. This is exactly the point we socialists have been trying to say all along. Both parties don't care about you. That's why we're here. We're here to give people a clear vision of world beyond private tyranny, beyond the two-party duopoly. And being here on the ground in Texas, I can tell you firsthand, our message resonates with people more and more. Crisis by crisis, day by day, we're building a socialist movement here in Texas. And that's it for me.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, David. And I'm sure I speak for everyone here when I give you a round of applause and I say that we are sending nothing but positive energy and support to you and your comrades out in San Angelo, and hoping that you will continue to do the amazing work that you are doing. You are blazing trail. You are getting things done. And the way you are serving the community and stepping up, but also bringing the community the message to the point, the way out of all of this crisis. It's very amazing, and it's really, really great that you are doing the work that you're doing. I hope that many other people around the country will take inspiration from you and engage in similar kinds of activities, engaging in service, study, and struggle. So very, very great presentation. Thank you very much, David. Now, our next speaker is Jumi. And Jumi is a 28-year-old Marxist-Leninist. He's in the DC area. He's been working and coordinating with some of the Students and Youth for a New America activism there and the relief efforts in the community there. He's the leader of the Front for an organized, guided United Nation. He's also a member of the Communist Party of the United States of America. He's a filmmaker. He's done a lot of great work. And Jumi will be speaking not only about what's going on in the DC area, but also about the theme of Black History Month. So Jumi, we really appreciate you coming and giving a great presentation. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Caleb. And yeah, thank you as well, David, for your very, very informative presentation about the conditions in Texas. I actually had done an educational for CPUSA, Communist Party, United States of America, talking about the further developments of the counter-revolution within the United States. That, begins with the climate change, issue, how its relationship to capitalism, the whole issue with Elon Musk and his collaboration with his organization, private entity of SpaceX with NASA. I'm not sure if you didn't mention the Ted Cruz thing. That was the big thing that was, sorry, did you say something?
Hilarious.
What was that? Sorry.
Yeah, the Ted Cruz thing was hilarious.
Yeah,
I can't believe
that's a big part of what's, they're planning on, is the fact that as these climate calamities make, southern regions, experience huge weather issues, like Texas had the Hurricane Harvey not too long ago, and now this big freeze thing. As that happens, there will be fewer habitable zones within the United States, and they are planning to kind of just disappear and go somewhere else that's more temperate, that isn't having these same issues. This is the stage that they're working on past, fascism. Began with settler colonialism, evolved into capitalism. That capitalism developed enough to be able to support imperialism, and then imperialism directed inwards into fascism. And now all these climate issues, the expansion of travel, which private space travel is probably not going to be accessible to the working class, to say the very least. More so to people who are looking to escape climate calamities. So, one of the many things that we do outside of education within CPUSA is outreach. Caleb mentioned also I'm a part of an organization called FLOGUN, which is Front for the Liberation of an Organized, Guided, and United Nation. We do more of the on-the-ground work, specifically in relation to, we saw the uprising last year and how people were focused on defund the police or abolish the police. But we go a step further in understanding that the police is the law enforcement apparatus of, the capitalist, neoliberal ruling class. So in order to find a way to reconcile the contradictions that face many people, especially people who look like me, Black Americans, we understand that we need organizations within our own communities that actually do protect and serve as the neoliberal capitalist, armed force imposes on us. In the whole idea of protection, there was a recent lynching last summer in DC of a kid named Deon K. There was a candlelight vigil that was held not too long after a police officer, did a jump out tactic and shot him, without any trial or just, kind of on the spot, just jumped out of his car, shot the child. A member of the community that we gathered here in DC to pay respects for the tragic loss of life. There was a security concern for that event. So we did a joint action with other organizations, including the New African Black Panther Party, to help secure the people and de-escalate any acts of aggression, including acts of aggression of the police towards the crowd. And we were able to have a successful, safe event. As far as service goes, we do joint actions in order to provide mutual aid for folks. Ultimately, our goal with our protect and serve clause is to, especially in the urban centers, is the reduction of violence. So there are plenty of organizations that we collaborate with in order to do that, because violence doesn't always just come at the tip of a barrel, but there are more insidious forms, such as the relationship with tenants and landlords, with eviction, especially during COVID season, healthcare, food insecurity. You know, as David mentioned before, with the water, you know, we have two Americas: the first world version that gets all of the resources, the public infrastructure at its highest peak, and then the third world conditions of hard water, asbestos, lead paint, black mold. We're working on developing self-sufficient means in order to combat those, in order to not have to rely on private entities, law enforcement, and politicians who antagonize us. I think, in relation to Black history, we have a lot of CPUSA played a large role throughout it's a, you know, ostensibly not a lot of our prominent members are within the same racial category as me. There is W.E.B. Du Bois, Angela Davis, you know, and today even we have former Black Panther Party members who are part of the organization. If you can see the symbol for CPUSA here in the background, the idea of the revolutionary working class is one deeply rooted in the new African and global Black experience. You know, if the whole Marxist-Leninist symbol of the hammer and sickle is to be applied to the American situation, the sickle of the agrarian development of the United States with settler colonialism included many new African people in tobacco fields, cotton fields, and all other forms of cash crops that were used to then develop into capitalism. And the CPUSA in and of itself is a product of the Great Migration. It began in 1919 in Chicago with the Black factory workers who had graduated from the fields. They believed that this wage labor could help emancipate them, but they learned that the fetters that they were facing on the plantation were not dissimilar to the ones that of them building up the industrial infrastructure of the United States. So, you know, Black residents of Chicago, as we can see, is a critical point as far as revolutionary development. The birthplace of Fred Hampton, who was one of the most prominent members of the Black Panther Party. Obviously the birthplace of CPUSA in 1919. And even if you look at their city now, are, you know, dealing with some of the most aggressive repression in the country. We understand as scientific socialists, the nature of contradictions. When a great force of counter-revolution affects a people, an even greater force of revolution exists to help combat that and enact the will of the people through the popular masses, through the proletarian class, and through other productive forces. And that's all I have to say for today.
Well, thank you very much, Jumi, for that presentation. Very informative. It sounds like very important work you're doing in DC. And thank you for highlighting the important role of the Black liberation struggle in U.S. history. It has been so central to so much of what progressive forces have fought for since the time of slavery and the heroic slave revolts of Nat Turner and the resistance of figures like John Brown. You know, right up into today with the struggle around Black Lives Matter and the struggle against mass incarceration. Thank you for that very moving presentation, and thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate what you have to say, and thank you for highlighting the role of great revolutionaries like W.E.B. Du Bois and Angela Davis and others. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much. And next, we are going to have a cultural performance by Chicano revolutionary poet, published author, and scholar, Matt Cedillo. Matt Cedillo is known all over the world for his revolutionary poetry. He has written books about literature and the history of poetry. He is widely appreciated all over the world for his great dynamic work. It is a real honor to have Matt Cedillo come on our web conference to give a performance. It was just a real honor to have him here. So with no further ado, Matt Cedillo will give us a cultural performance. Thank you so much. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Matt.
What I said was so beautiful, though. It was such a tragedy that we lost it. I want to thank Dust for having me, for inviting me. I want to thank Caleb for that wonderful introduction just now. Now I got to live up to it, so that's always thanks, buddy. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna get right into it. Here's some poetry. I'll read a couple poems from this book that I just wrote, Mowing Leaves of Grass, and 2 from the new book, See on the Second Floor, which is coming out next month. All right, here we go. Sundown, Levittown, Fort Apache, Dirty Harry, John Wayne, Blackface, Minuteman, Moynihan, Gone with the Wind, Breaking Bad. Washington Redskin, Confederate flag, the sword, the dollar, the cannon, the scholar, the cavalry, and the Ivy League history, as written by lightning, is the rising smoke of burning village. The ways and means which victors keep their victims, the frontier thesis and notes on the state of Virginia, extraction, expansion, the Winnie of the West, Lewis and Clark, Smith and Wesson, I'll circle the wagon with bloodshed and slave sweat, the crack of the whip, the law of 3/5, the crown republic of King Cotton, the intended failures of Reconstruction, the housing covenants that greeted great migrations, the same to the Mexicans in poor Mexico. So far from heaven and so close to Monroe Doctrine. To Davy Crockett, to prison industrial complex, a war on drugs is a war on our young. Bloody Christmas, Reefer Madness, 15 to life for 4 ounces, East Oakland, West Baltimore, South La Brea and Oliver North, Plymouth Rock, Jamestown, the Rio Grande, stolen lives, stolen land. All right, here's another one. This one's called Post. You know, it seems like this yesterday. Municipalities raised cities, built nuclear families, associations of sturdy pockets, a chicken every pot, 2-car garage, a military expansion, a man on the moon and a finger on the button. Tomorrow doesn't show up all at once, but when it does, automate the factory, liquidate the pension, auction off the options. Don't worry about me. I worry free, freelance contingency, smiling at your service to gig economy, side hustle. Millennial, post-industrial standard, hire me as an adjunct, fire me as a contingent into city I cannot afford to live in. Tell me my credit score, better yet, tell me yours. Promise me the world, then show me the door. I was not born angry. I was abandoned. I'm your velveteen rabbit. The drying paint of Saturn eating his children. Neoliberalism feasting on the marrow of the past and the present, the jobs of tomorrow gone today, born sometime after the foreclosure. Tell me another for the fire. Tell me the one where I killed the economy. So this next poem is a deeply Los Angeles poem. Much like me, much like this hat, you know, it's all about LA. So it's called La Reina, and it's about so many women I've known out here, and so much of the kind of heart and soul of the working class. You know, the Latina is the lowest paid worker in America, 54 cents on the dollar, and this poem is kind of dedicated to that experience. It's called La Reina. Los Angeles full of abuelas raise grandkids in Spanglish, or the watchful eye walk them with the Virgin of Jesus. Make a village out of a duplex, made Catholic, but the roots are indigenous. Family extension going out one plot. Hand-me-downs are share rooms, reflections. In la quech, porque mi casa es tu casa, and the same promises. That's how I'm living. That's palabra. Start a candle. Burn some sage, pick your saints at your altar, the sign of the cross. The sound of the conch, your prayers lift at 4 directions. That's culture, not contradiction. Folks in the back, they fight for the living. 515 hail from the rowdy section of Dodger Stadium, but their hearts still burn with the fire from that Chavez ravine. And here is home, La Reina. At 54 cents on the dollar, America's most exploited worker. Neglected, disrespected, underrepresented, presumed incompetent. If she lives life as expected, she'll be labeled statistic. If she manages to outpace them, threaten, they will blame affirmative action, but either way, they will not see her. They will demand her labor, paid and unpaid, smiling, her eyes humble and her mouth silent. Lay the river. Cities past, present, and future. The Queen of Angels. Invisible to those who float. Through canyons, lagoons, and cemeteries, whitewashing adobe through a series of fevered dreams connected by a bridge called her back to those who make demands. The stories told to bury the past, the ones that serve to remind her that she works for them, that she is lucky to even have a job here in El Pueblo. Nuestra Señora, La Reina de los Ángeles de Rio por $5 they call it La La Land. 78 with the Pueblo. 1890s, the brickyards of Montebello built one again, only beaten and shot. What for no Mexicans, no dogs? What if it's the rules for instead of schools? We were written out of the history of a city we found as we are priced out of the homes of our mothers. Yet more and more of greater Los Angeles suddenly discovered this is the struggle of forebears. Un para pan, historia y terras, victoria siempre. The struggle is real. La lucha sigue. La Reina, Los Ángeles on the front lines of every fight, holding it down, holding the better half of the sky, fighting education, fighting for education, fighting for tenants' rights, fighting la migra, la jura, polici, chingala ice, fighting for dignity, hers and ours, all the damn time, proud and brown and brown and proud of the hearts and hands, the backbone of these race fists. So we throw two fingers up, we say F Donald Trump. That's not identity politics, that's a cry of the proletariat at 54 cents on the dollar. She is the face of it. So when you see her pushing some other mother's rollers, locked on cash, register the third, fourth, fifth, shift to the oppressed, show some respect, bow your head, bend the knee. All hail La Reina, the once and future queen. La Reina. So this next poem is and I encourage everyone watching now to reach out to me if you're interested in buying a book. You can find my website, mattsadio.com. You can contact me from there if you're interested in getting a book. But if you hear this next poem, understand it's a persona poem. Do not hit me up for money. I am not rich. This is a poem about the rich. It's called The Rich. The rich, well, they're not like you and me. They see an opportunity and they grab it. Reach for the stars and they put them in their pocket. Company stays in the red, but they're backed by the government. Snort the public diamonds, the lines of pure profit, research and development. The rich, well, they're a different breed. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams, thoroughbred stallions, quarter-billion mansions on the sea, Deepwater Horizon, blood diamonds, golden parachutes, silicon messiahs, feasting on endangered species, served on silver platters and winter palaces, carved from the tips of icebergs, six-figure charters, vulture capital, million-dollar cufflinks, fucking life like an apple, insured by suicide nets, lifestyles of the criminally negligent, but you haven't lived till you've launched a car into space for no real reason. And that's what I call freedom. The rich, well, here's how it is. Dollars and cents. Trademark and rent, facts and figures, lines and ledger, derivatives and debt, building the future, increasing productivity, union busting back to the 100-hour work week, trimming the fat, producing monopolies with real money, shortages and bets. Not my friend. It's how the rich stay rich while the rest make poor decisions in its pure ecstasy, living in the lap of luxury, pushing pharmaceuticals. The markup, the market will bear your body to its altar at a life or death bargain. The gospel of wealth, because it is what it is, and that's all it's ever been. The less we spend, the more we keep. You see, the rich, the poor, well, they're just like you and me. 2 hands, 2 feet, the sky, the sea, and everything between. One heart that beats in the time to make the most of it. So you'll find no sympathy reaching into these deep pockets. All we ever asked was our fair share, and God damn it, that's all of it. So we out on the streets screaming for peace and justice. We sleep in satin sheets, dreaming free and guiltless over oceans and tariffs, liquidating pensions, and off to bid on porcelain portraits at billion-dollar auctions. You know you need us. You know we're selling your secrets. You know still send us DNA kits, watching the puppets on television debate freedom, free speech, fascism, democracy. We're reaching the earth, punching the ozone, and fuel the economy with space stations. Yes, space stations. Hydrating the red planet. We're gonna survive this lava pit. So you got pots and pans, we got deeds and plans. Chopping down rainforest, colonizing the moon. We're the rich. Who the hell are you? We'll privatize the water supply and then copyright the tears falling from your eyes. Burn it all down. What are you talking about? The ice caps already melting. You want to start some ish? Eat the rich. We're already killing your kids. One carbon footprint, one gas house emission, one oil rig, one naval ship, one free trade agreement at a time. We'll get away with it too. Nothing we say or do is ever held against us. Haven't you been paying attention? We're rich. Okay, and I will leave you with one final poem. This one's called The Servant Song. And it seems so much time. This poem's really about why cries for like reform, to make the thing better, to find what is beautiful in life, and trying to convince people who are oppressing us to be better to us ultimately won't work, no matter how beautiful your efforts might be, right? So that's what this poem's about. It's called The Servant Song. Thrones of blood. Thrones of blood, empires of sweat, chambers of commerce, ministers of finance, columns of debt. The law is print. Its right is script. High priests preach the evangelical canons aim steady. The doctrine of famine and luxury, war is progress. Property is sacred. Starvation is the market. Your mouths are reckless. Look at the gates. They are blood ready. Captains of industry. Lords of limited liability, well-dressed murderous thieves, the modern kings of corporate speech walk among us. As loaded guns, chambers locked full of legal teams and legalese, and just enough finely printed legal degrees of separation to wash their teeth clean. Predators, in every sense of the word, it is a wolf's run. The night, capitalists gather around a bonfire to listen to the servant's song. How vain are we? How vain are we, us composed of cosmic dust, set beneath the stars to chart our brief, chaotic lives by the time it takes our small, fragile, distant eyes to finally see the light. Praise be the sky. Praise be the day and praise be the night. With your steps moonlit, press your face to the wind. Let the harvest drink you in. Blessed be our lungs, oh how our lungs have blessed us. Your body, conduit between breath and divine. Praise be the vine. Praise be the joy it brings to your eyes. At this, both guest and host were pleased. A servant, clever and observant, unburdened by the groundbreaking decisions that set the shoulders of titans, and who better than one given to a life of service to serve as a reminder to breathe easy. How forgetful are we? How forgetful are we, our tongues dripping, tripping over one another to touch up monuments, climb ladders of success, deliver the speech of self-made men. Oh, how we forget. The very soil we walk upon has been tilled by many hands, that even the tree's tallest branch grew from the same seed as the root. At this, both guest and host were amused. At a servant, humble yet with sense of purpose, who better than one given to a life of service to serve as a reminder of the divine order of all things. How tragic are we? How tragic indeed, our whole lives, boulders and mountains, and the drive to make sense of them. Oceans to conquer, soil to bleed, into each a plot of sun, a job to be done. Please, please, as we push this rock together, do not strike at us so mercilessly. At this, neither guest nor host were pleased. The night had become political. For what good is a servant whose demands exceed their purpose? The capitalists cried out, have we not been good to you? Have we not given you all that you have in all your years of service? Have you not heard? Have you not learned? The law is threat. Its right is death. Your mouth is reckless. Look at the gates. Supreme justice reign upon us. In the servant's quarter, the servant's daughter sings a different song. One of blood and conquest, of fire and vengeance, of dawn in the horizon, of a new day rising, dreams of hacienda burning, reeds of the gallows, the guillotines, firing squads, and basements full of Romanovs. She laughs. She weeps. She dreams, she speaks with the others. And with each passing day, they grow strong. Thank you for having me.
Well, that was a dynamic presentation. Absolutely thank you, Matt Cedillo, for bringing your revolutionary poetry and your revolutionary energy and your passion to this web conference. You really added something special. That was really, really amazing. And I hope people will check out Matt Cedillo's work and look into the many, many great performances he has given. Thank you very, very, very much, Matt Cedillo. Now, next, we're going to have someone that I've known for quite a few years. And Comrade Pella is a longtime activist. He's worked against wars. He's worked against capitalism and injustice. But as someone who lives in New Jersey, he lately has been doing something that not many revolutionaries and leftists are particularly willing to do, and that is engage with Donald Trump supporters and try to win them to oppose neoliberalism and capitalism. So because Comrade Pella has taken on that unique task, he's going to give us a presentation about how to engage with supporters of Donald Trump about the evils of capitalism and imperialism. Comrade Pella.
Salutations, comrades. Can you hear me? Thank you. Okay. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Michael Pelagatti. You may refer to me as Comrade Pella. A little bit of backstory. I am a tour guide, an urban historian, cited in 4 PhD dissertations. Despite not graduating from college, and one from the original group which camped out at Zuccotti Park in New York City in September 2011, sparking some unnamed global anti-capitalist movement a decade ago. And at present, I am composing my memoir about being involved with that movement. It's a high honor to speak with all of you tonight on a matter which I find most pressing: turnovers. We urgently need turnovers. Now, I know what you're thinking. What is this, a football game? No, but the applied concept does come from the sport of football. When the defense strips the ball away from the opposing team before exhausting all of their turns, that is called a turnover. 80% of the time, the team that forces the most turnovers is the team that goes on to win the game. Right now, we are not generating enough turnovers to defeat our opponent, which is neoliberalism. In fact, when the left goes on offense nowadays, more often than not, the ball is given away. The ball in play here is the general public, which includes working class Trump supporters. If we are to go forward and translate the concepts of a living wage, guaranteed housing, guaranteed education, guaranteed health care, and the collective ownership of the means and modes of production, we do not disengage ourselves from the opposition. In the opposition, we go through the opposition and we turn them over. The contemporary line of thought within the countercultural zeitgeist, and such as, according to me, one of three spheres of zeitgeist. There's also the mainstream cultural zeitgeist and the reactionary zeitgeist, is currently dominated by concepts advanced by academics such as Jay Sakai, Robin DiAngelo, Patricia Williams, Anita Hill, Jennifer Wenzel, Mary Matsuda, Lonnie Guinier, and Richard Delgado, alike, who postulate theories rooted in the Frankfurt School strata of social conflict theory as related to race, sex, gender, and decolonization. These theoretical applications, when applied in a healthy context as relative to the countercultural zeitgeist, are useful in terms of facilitating better understanding between historically marginalized and oppressed groups as relative to allies and comrades outside of those historically marginalized groups who are also alienated by the crisis that is neoliberalism. The issue with this mode of thought, however, is that such is not always applicable to the mainstream cultural zeitgeist and not applicable at all towards the reactionary zeitgeist, and thus they fail to produce turnovers. When applied to the mainstream cultural zeitgeist, these theories can be weaponized by capitalism to market and fetishize marginalized communities, lulling one half of the mainstream cultural zeitgeist, sympathetic to the plight of the historically oppressed, into advancing the ends of capital wrapped in the cloth of social justice, absent of addressing neoliberalism directly, while discouraging the other half of the cultural zeitgeist from entering the spheres of the counterculture due to a hesitancy to embrace full-on socialism. As far as the reactionary zeitgeist goes, dominated by contradictory concepts like individualistic libertarian philosophy and cultural plurality around nationalism, and they are contradictory, are applications that they're rejected outright, and they're viewed with outright hostility by a people who cling to the flag in times of economic trouble and distress. Throwing water onto an electrical fire does not stop the fire. It causes the fire to grow. Right now, most of the left is throwing water onto the electrical fire that is Trumpism and pushing who could be potential comrades and allies away. Another mode of thought postulated by the left is, we do not engage or speak with fascists. We do not unite with fascists. But here's the issue. The culturally and economically moderate and conservative people are not ideologically fascist per se. And disengagement with these types only enables actual ideological fascists and neo-Nazis to exploit their ostracism and pull them into their toxic and perverted ideologies. We must break ourselves loose from the current postmodernist thought permeating throughout the countercultural zeitgeist, seeping into the mainstream. We must go underground anonymously and engage moderates and the right on their own turf, both in person and online. They are usually found on minds.com, Parler, and Gab. And we must engage in a concept that I call correction through redirection and advanced dialectical materialist analysis as a direct challenge to libertarian mode and thought within the spheres of the center-right and reactionary zeitgeist. As it appears to me, the Trump coalition is made up of 5 opposing factions. The Christian right, the Reagan-era GOP neoconservatives, which put the Bush family into power, the ones who push for tax cuts, austerity, and constant military spending, almost always religious fundamentalists, and very anti-abortion, pro-military, very friendly to Israel, extremely anti-Iran because they're Muslims, extremely anti-China, mostly due to them being atheists, but racism is an underlying reason too, and they're about 70% Caucasian. Then you got the libertarian right, like the Christian right, but more extreme in the austerity rhetoric, quoting Rothbard and Hayek all the time, and pro-free market capitalism. They view the Constitution as the utmost authority, very pro-gun, more so than the Christian right. Apathetic on the abortion issue, doesn't think foreign aid should go to Israel, also anti-China because China is communist. These people think that Ronald Reagan is a big government socialist and believe that Ron Paul is the second coming of Jesus Christ. They are usually former college frat boys, business types, but sometimes straight up uneducated. 80% Caucasian, ex-union Democrats, the base that is angry about industrial outsourcing coming in the form of NAFTA and other free trade agreements. Also anti-communist, believes in government spending in respects to infrastructure, Medicare for all, and social programs, but is still anti-socialist for whatever reason, angry, jaded, and bitter, feeling like they have been forgotten by the party in favor of white-collar professionals, more concerned about domestic policy than foreign policy, racially homogenous. Conspiracy theorists, people who understand that multinational capitalist influences are influencing U.S. policy, unwittingly anti-Semitic, failing to realize Israel is a vassal of the Anglo-Euro banking cartel, think communism is some globalist philosophy orchestrated by George Soros, controlling the United Nations, very anti-war, pro-9/11 truth, very anti-Federal Reserve, sometimes believes the earth is flat, not always, but sometimes religious, racially homogenous, white supremacists, Aryan Brotherhood, neo-Confederates, neo-Nazis, usually the people who are feeding the conspiracy theorists with all sorts of anti-Semitic falsehoods, convinced that globalism is communism, believe in cultural hegemony, almost always capitalist, extremely anti-China, extremely anti-Israel, believes in Pax Americana, an ethno-state of Pax Americana, 100% Caucasian. When these 5 factions overlap, that is what forms the basis of Trumpism, with the common thread being anti-socialism and anti-globalization, which they fail to recognize as neoliberalism. However, there exists a multitude of contradictory positions among them, especially as it pertains to free trade. Military spending and civil liberties in Israel. If you wish to undo the Trump coalition, it is important to pin contradictory positions against each other. You can't claim they're all just the same when they aren't all just the same. They're different. You find the weak links and you break them down brick by brick. First step, cause dissension among their ranks. First, by turning all 4 factions against the white supremacists. This is the method I use. Do not present yourself as a communist or a socialist at first. Present yourself as a neo-Hamiltonian, someone who is opposed to neoliberalism, globalism, believes in centralized state power and equality for all Americans, no matter their stripes. Declare open hostility toward neo-Confederate and neo-Nazi rhetoric. Appropriate figures such as Thaddeus Stevens, Abraham Lincoln, Robert M. La Follette, Fiorello LaGuardia, progressive Republicans who are against the deep state, in meme warfare. That is the first step. Drive the Nazis out of their communities. Second step, with carefully worded dialectical materialist rhetoric, you turn the conspiracy theorists and the ex-Union Democrats against the Reaganites and the libertarians. And then with the anti-imperialist narrative, you turn the libertarians against the Reaganites. Bill Gates, Rockefeller, George Soros, the United Nations, and the Federal Reserve, and the Democratic Party are not socialist, even if these people say otherwise. Use facts and history to keep hitting this point home. These persons and institutions work within the framework of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is not a socialist philosophy. Third step, keep playing the anti-war card with the stubbornly libertarian and pin them against the Reagan people. Neoliberalism created by unregulated capitalism and the military-industrial complex are linked at the hip. Illustrate that the same people who lied the United States into a war with Iraq, the Christian conservative Reagan people, are the same exact people who are lying the United States into a war with China. Emphasize the fact that George Soros is anti-China. He supported the Hong Kong protests, he supports Tibet, and he supports Taiwan. He is no socialist. Create internal conflicts within libertarian rhetoric and philosophy, also play up the obnoxious Christian culture that the Reagan GOP wants to impose on the secular libertarians and everyone else. This process will not take one day. It must be constant and drawn out, but it will turn some of these people over, I know. And winning just one mind is a victory in and of itself. To the side of scientific socialism anyway. Trumpism is a pseudo-philosophy and a pseudo-opposition to a problem caused by global capitalism that liberals refuse to address head-on. You need to practice patience and build up your tolerance to expose yourself to politically incorrect, outlandish, and racist nonsense. But you sift through that nonsense and keep the attack on neoliberalism and imperialism while playing devil's advocacy, and one by one, you will win these people over. This is guerrilla psychological warfare for the minds of the general population and the center right. And in guerrilla warfare, it is Ho Chi Minh theory that works best. Once again, the current approach practiced in the form of this neo-Jacobin cancel culture, accusing everyone of being a racist, sexist, bigoted, fascist colonizer, and social gentrification is not working in terms of generating turnovers and translating the doctrine of dialectical materialism to people alienated by neoliberalism, but who do not know how to combat such. Once these people are won over to dialectical materialism, then they will be open to embrace narratives that embrace gradual cultural change and intersectional struggles regarding race, sex, gender, and colonial reparations beyond their own immediate issues of economic marginalization. Time is of the essence, folks. 2024 is only a few years away, and we must not allow for Trumpism to continue if we are to defeat neoliberalism. Get creative and get cracking. Godspeed, comrades. Okay, I'm done.
Well, thank you, Comrade Pella, for that very informative presentation. A lot of information there, and I hope that you'll speak on this again and get into more specifics. That was a lot of very useful information, and I hope that more people will listen to you and we can have a lot more turnovers. So thank you very much for that. Now, our keynote presentation tonight is going to be given by Dust James. And Dust James is quite a dynamic YouTuber and activist. I introduced him first to my YouTube channel community as Dust James, the Marxist-Leninist trucker. You know, Dust has a YouTube channel, a regular YouTube program with David Fox of Australia called Working Class Revolt. He has done many dynamic interviews with many great progressive figures, from, you know, poets and musicians to people involved in struggles both in the United States and around the world. Dust is from North Carolina, and he brings an anti-racist, anti-imperialist, working class perspective on his YouTube broadcasts. He's always got something good to say, and I'm really honored to have him give a keynote presentation to us tonight on the theme of this conference, which is building communities of solidarity. So take it away, Dust James.
Hello, Hello, comrades. Hello, friends. Hello, brothers and sisters. I'm absolutely honored to be here with the Center for Political Innovation. It is an absolute honor, man. David Cedillo, great work down there in Texas. Jumi, wow, great analysis. Representing Afro-America in the struggle, in the very important struggle in the House, the prison of nations. And my friend Matt Cedillo of Telehagwire, Chicano Media Group, fire as always, man. He always gets the crowd hype. And Comrade Pella, damn, you know your stuff, man. And I feel you. I think I've turned a few libertarians myself over to socialism, and it is a trend. We're always fed this, anti-communism, red baiting. Communism is evil. It's the government. We're told that, and that is ingrained and put on us. And even folks, that would be, socialist, they can't get into it, including myself and my own journey to socialism. I was anti-socialist at one point. That's just who we are. We are a product of our economic and cultural society. That's what produces us. So I've had a talk with a few, libertarian type folks, and who were already on the right direction. They're already against the wars, which is the crystallization of imperialism, the leading enemy that we face today. And just, throw out how absolutely crazy the stuff is. You look down there, what's going on in Texas. That's what libertarianism gets you. It gets you no infrastructure. It gets you no social services. It gets you, if you ask a libertarian what's the best society ahead, they might say the Wild West or Somalia. Where absolute chaos and anarchy is happening, which hurts poor people. We need some kind of structure built on our needs and our wishes, and not only economically, but politically and socially as well. Well, I guess I'll get right into my talk. As always, a little bit about myself. I'm Dust James. I've been organizing a while. I go back, I did a lot of organizing under the Obama era. So Joe Biden don't scare me. I know we had Trump for a few years and the liberals were all with us. And now, well, I don't know where they're at. The kid's still in cages, but all the liberals disappeared. Shit, I remember last year, right about a year ago in January, Donald Trump murdered the honored General Soleimani, man that was fighting ISIS. And I had, liberals down the street having an anti-war protest. And I went down there and on their stuff. And I worked with them a bit. And they were saying, oh, Soleimani's bad, but we're going to have this protest. But why the hell who the hell told you Soleimani was bad? This dude's fighting ISIS. He's loved by his people. And just so you can keep your contact with your liberal friends. And I went down there, and there was people, that were invited to. This was back during the primaries. People that were out there with big money that came to see the primaries and stuff. And now, as their candidate that they pushed to get in to stop the fascism of Donald Trump, recently bombed Syria. They're nowhere to be found. And so that's why uniquely, and I've ran into this. I've been in organizing in the struggle from the working class perspective, and I've actually had a very similar experience that a lot of people of oppressed nations have come under. I know of working people and people from oppressed nations, when they get into leftist politics, there's a lot of bougie Trotskyites there that expect us to have this here, or go to the, fancy bars and shit and talk about Marx and all this bullshit. And there ain't nothing about, the working class. A lot of these trot clubs and, and some of these intellectual Marxists and stuff ain't had none of the experience I had. And I feel alienated when I get up in them places. And, we need working class safe places, workplaces of, for, and by the working class in our communities that are dedicated to socialism. From the masses to the masses, as Caleb Maupin says, out of the movement to the masses. And that's who I am. I am the masses. I am the people. And that's what I come here, and that's what I'm here to represent. Now, why am I here? I mean, I'll give it a little bit of the struggle I've been through. I'm a truck driver from North Carolina. You don't usually associate that with socialism and Marxism. Well, I might say a joke like, it's like, y'all know CPI is a socialist organization. It's one of them commie groups. So why am I here? Well, the reason why I'm here is I grew up in poverty. I grew up down a mile-long dirt road in a 2-bedroom trailer with an 8-person family. And I went to some of the worst schools in the county. We were the first white family in the county to get a Habitat for Humanity house. And that puts a lot of stress on it. I had a very dysfunctional family. I saw my dad, work in the construction fields. I saw, people around me in my community dealing with, mental health struggles and shit, and the damn infrastructure in the South. Damn infrastructure in the South goes back to goddamn slavery times. In the Black Belt South, we do not have basic mental health infrastructure. We do not have living wages. We do not have access to health care, and the damn schools don't teach shit. You get up into college, you're like, and you're supposed to have a basic setting for it. And that's another reason why, folks whose family members ain't been to college be dropping out of college. And they say that's the way up to get an education. But it's like the whole damn world set against us from the damn beginning. And that's why I'm here. Because I'm tired of it. I'm disillusioned with this society. I'm disillusioned with the crap they've been telling us that America is the best place in the world. The United States is somehow better. The United States is the beacon of freedom and democracy. Well, I ain't seen it. I ain't seen it from day one. I've seen struggle. I've seen pain. I've seen a lack of resources. I've seen a lack of infrastructure. And I'm tired of it. I want to do something about it. So from a very young age, I got involved with socialism and organizing. And the first people I found in the struggle were people in the African-American community, people in Chicano community that have it worse than white brothers and sisters. And that's the people that led me and taught me Marxism, people that have been in the struggle for a long time. I got involved in immigrants' rights. I got involved in movements against police brutality and always against the war. Always against the war. That's the biggest concept. I'm fighting not for the people, not just for the working class brothers and sisters, Black and Chicano that are on the same line as me in the factory. I've worked about every factory in this town. I've worked in textiles. I worked in meat packing. And the folks beside me, that's who I'm fighting for. Poor Black and brown folks that are continually exploited by this system, super exploited by this system. The entire infrastructure, political, economic, is meant to exploit our labor. And I don't draw the line at the border. I keep going past the border. International solidarity. This idea of solidarity, an injury to one is an injury to all, affects not only the people in the United States, but the people all around the world trying to fight for themselves. The people of Venezuela, the people of Iran, the people of China. Attack against them is attack against us. Attack against the Syrian people is attack against all working people. That's the idea of international solidarity. All you got to do to convince somebody not to be a liberal or Republican is get them to truly embrace the idea of international solidarity. As Che Guevara said, it may seem ridiculous, but a true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. And that kind of gets back to another part of it. It's not just the political and the economic analysis, which is important and the basis of our understanding. But there is a spirit to us. There is a passion to us. There is a humanity that must be shown. There's a light in every one of us that must shine through. And as they keep coming down on us, if they lower their wages, as they remove our benefits, as they push her in the worse and worse conditions, the light is going to shine through. And that's what I believe I'm representing. And that's why I work I work 80, 90 hours a week. Shit, man. I've been so over the road, man, is a hard life. Hard goddamn life you work over the road. Living in a goddamn truck. Trying to provide for my family. And then I got a local job now. And I'm hauling damn sodas and all this stuff for convenience store up and down my ramp. On this ramp, my damn calf started exploding on me. Damn muscles hurt, and goddamn back hurts. But I get through that. At the end of every day, I get on here and I talk about what I learned. I talk about socialism. I talk about the understanding that it's going to bring society forward. So that is what a communist is. A communist is somebody who works hard to provide for themselves and their family and struggles not only independently economically, but takes a portion of their efforts and puts it towards the greater good, puts it towards building a better future, and takes it serious. I'm here with a suit and a tie. I got my hair straight. I ain't gonna go. This ain't some kind of ego trip. This ain't some kind of thing I do in my spare time to make myself feel better than other people. You know, a lot of people get in religion for the right and wrong reasons. Some people get into religion, you know, they want to feel the community and be a part of it. Other people get in religion because they want to feel like they got Jesus and nobody else does, so they're better than everybody else. Now, that's what a lot of some of these leftists do. But that is the exact antithesis of what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. All power comes from the people. All the power of the capitalists have stolen from us. To get back, we need to empower the people. We got to talk to the people. We got to go to the people, respect the people, and listen to the people. There ain't no condescending savers going to rule us from our judgment hall, as the International says, that Caleb mentioned in one of his recent talks. We are the only people that's going to do something about it. Ain't no Bernie Sanders. I call him a sheepdog. I call him a sheepdog because he's there. He's they best. I always say even they best ain't shit. Even they best ain't shit. So, I mean, Bernie Sanders talking a good game about he's going to get his health care. He's going to do that. But then he goes and backs Biden. Biden, who is bombing our brothers and sisters in Syria, is continuing the wars in Afghanistan. Sheepdog. Ain't no other way around that. It's us, the people, talking to one another, talking to our neighbors, getting out. It's millions of people like us who are disillusioned with the system that are going to bring about the culture of solidarity. Building communities of solidarity is the only way we're going to get out of this struggle. And the understanding of Marxism is rather simple. There is a society. You can call that the thesis. And there's elements within that society that ain't working out so well. There's forces in that society that are struggling. You can call that the antithesis. And those struggles bring about a new society, a new thesis. So it is these contradictions of class and national oppression that are going to influence and give birth to the understanding that will bring about the new society. I think it's being led up in the global south. China has implemented a command economy, has built railroads all over the country. Even countries like Iran have put the people before profits, have organized a government that has supremacy over the economy, and the people have grassroots organizations that control that government. And that is what we're seeing all over the third world. And we've seen instances of that in the United States. We can look at the Black Panthers, the original Rainbow Coalition. The new movie that came out was rather Hollywood. I think it had a little bit of a liberal slant, but it showed a good portion of that history. Fred Hampton and his theory of, and Huey Newton, their theory of intercommunalism is very unique to the prison house of nations. And I think that story of the original Rainbow Coalition is something we can study in our forgotten history and our subdued history. And I mean, I'll tell the story. You had Puerto Rican folks with the Young Lords, the Black Panthers, and you also had the Young Patriots. The Young Patriots were a group of economic refugees from the South living in ghettos up in Chicago that came to conclusion through their own material exploitation that the Puerto Rican brothers and sisters and the Black brothers and sisters were their ally against the capitalists and the pigs. And that is the reemerging understanding. I say Bernie Sanders jumped in front of the word socialism. A lot of folks, even some folks on here, like to give Bernie Sanders a credit for popularizing the term socialism. But I mean, the same people want to say that were the same people out there with Occupy. Occupy was masses of people all over this country. It wasn't even in New York. There was an Occupy Greensboro. There was Occupy demonstrations down there in Pittsburgh. There was Occupy demonstrations down there in Texas. It were regular people who were dissatisfied with the system came out. You know, it was disorganized, but it was a glimmer of what was coming, and it came from the disillusionment. And it was that force. And I think I was on the earlier front of that. But young people today know about socialism. More people than ever are looking into socialism. And we got to put them on the right bit of socialism, not something that endorses imperialists like Joe Biden, but something that's real about international solidarity, that stands with poor Black and brown people here and stands with poor Black and brown people around the world. What is the difference between voter suppression in North Carolina, where you got pigs out here pepper spraying people on their way to the polls? You got them gerrymandering these districts. What is the difference between voter suppression in North Carolina to destroying the democratic country of Venezuela? Look at a picture of the government of Venezuela. Indigenous people, Black people, brown people. That is who's leading up the government of Venezuela. And they elected Hugo Chavez, and they elected Nicolas Maduro again in vast majorities. They rewrote a constitution, and it's our government, the same government that takes the political power away from poor Black and people here, is trying to destroy the government of poor Black and brown people in the global South. Trying to take away their health care, trying to take away their resources, trying to steal their natural resources. We need a movement here in the United States where we build power in our communities and we demand control over our resources. Demand that we have the control over our energy sector, our timber, our infrastructure, our utilities. This is ours. It is we, the working class, that builds all wealth. And we have absolutely right to the wealth we have built. And we're going to take it. And we're going to take it through mass political education, mass political organizing. We do not have to be prisoner to the ideas of the past. We can move on and move forward. I've been all 48 states and Canada. And what I've seen out in the Midwest is absolutely horrible. You got boarded up towns. The only place left is a loan agency that gives 200 payday loans. And these people giving 200%, 300% loans on interest, a gambling den, and then a hall of vice. You got your convenience store. And the government building is in disarray. The local businesses are closed up. People are moving out. People are getting on drugs. And this ain't the beginning of it. This is the fall of the crumbling empire. It first happened to our African American and Chicano brothers and sisters. The deindustrialization of the United States, of the imperial core, started out 70s and 80s. And it first happened to Black and brown brothers and sisters. And we have evidence that the CIA introduced crack cocaine in the Black community to destroy the Black community, and then use that as justification to build one of the largest prison populations in the world. And it didn't stop there. In recent years in rural America, You got the opioid crisis, the pill crisis. This is the same tactics that the English use against the Chinese. This is the opium wars, where they force drugs on the Chinese to control them. They're doing it to us, and they're doing it to our communities. And we have to put a stop to it. But first, we got to recognize who our enemies. This media. The media and the school system got us thinking that maybe the Democrats are the answer, maybe the Republicans are the answer. No. We are the answer. We are the solution. We en masse will mobilize and organize and build the power necessary for a new future. All power to the people, comrades. All right, that's it, y'all.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Dust James, for your very inspiring words, full of revolutionary passion. People can check out your Anti-Imperialist America channel. They should subscribe to your channel. That was just really, really great. That was really amazing. And thank you, Dust. Thank you for your inspiring remarks. Many people, as I can see in the chat, identified very strongly with what you had to say. And same goes for all the presentations we've heard. Now, before we get to the Q&A, we are going to have a presentation from actually a good friend of mine, Don Corder, someone I've known for a little bit. He runs a YouTube channel called Revolution Report, and he has a brief presentation for us tonight that he's recorded in a video about the situation going on in Ukraine, where the people of Ukraine have been struggling. There's been a crisis in the country. 2014, you had the government overthrown by a movement that CNN told everybody was a revolution. And so Don is going to give us an update on the situation in Ukraine. So I'm going to just share screen with you all. So there we go. All right, I'm just going to...
On December 16, 2020, the United Nations General Assembly voted on a resolution put forward by the Russian Federation for, quote, combating glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. Sounds like something any logical person could get behind, right? Apparently, Western liberal democracies are not so logical. The entire European Union abstained from the vote, and the only 3 countries to vote against it were Canada, the United States, and the Ukraine. How could these countries, which fought against fascism during the Second World War, think it's a bad idea to combat fascist ideologies in the 21st century? Well, American and Canadian representatives to the UN said neo-Nazis deserve freedom of speech just like the rest of us. As for Ukraine, they said that the bill doesn't focus enough on so-called communist crimes in the country, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This decision to oppose the resurgence of fascism in the modern world doesn't have to do with freedom of speech, and it doesn't have to do with some so-called communist crimes of the Soviet past of Ukraine. It has everything to do with the West's political, economic, and moral support for ultra-right-wing neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. More than $5 billion of American taxpayer money has already been spent to advance U.S. interests in that country. That's according to the U.S. State Department's own Victoria Nuland. She became infamous after her discussion with the then U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine got leaked. They were talking about who they wanted to put in power after the smoke from the 2014 Maidan coup d'etat had cleared. Now, much of that money has made its way, both directly and indirectly, in the form of money and weapons, into the hands of armed neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. And all that money is apparently recorded on the U.S. defense budget. This isn't anything out of the ordinary for Washington, though. It's been like this since the defeat of fascism in 1945. Where did all the Nazis who outlived Hitler run? Did they go to the socialist world? Of course not. They would have been executed for their genocidal atrocities they committed on the Eastern Front. So naturally, they felt perfectly at home in the anti-communist West that was then gearing up for a Cold War against their former Soviet allies. Maybe you didn't know this, but the first head of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was a former Nazi named Hans Speidel. Another ex-Nazi named Reinhard Gehlen led a post-war anti-communist terrorist organization that was backed by the CIA. Gerhard von Mend, the mastermind who organized anti-communist fifth columns behind Soviet lines during the Second World War, became a CIA collaborator. The list goes on, but if you want to learn more about these people, I did make a video including information on some of these Nazis. You can find it on my YouTube channel, The Revolution Report. Anyway, let's get back to Ukraine specifically. During the war, there were thousands of anti-fascist heroes, in some provinces like Odessa more than others. They were partisans who took up arms against their invaders and worked closely with the Soviet armed forces to liberate the country. On the other hand, West Ukraine was a hotbed for Nazi collaboration. A number of collaborationist organizations formed, like the Auxiliary Police, which tried to hunt down partisans, the Waffen-SS Division Galicia, made up primarily of Ukrainians and responsible for massacres of Jews and other ethnic minorities. But the main organization that collaborated with the Nazis was the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. After 1939, it began to receive weapons and funding to conduct an insurgency behind Soviet lines. 2 years later, when Nazi Germany began invading the USSR, the organization's leader, Stepan Bandera, declared an independent Ukraine. Almost immediately after that, Bandera was thrown in a German concentration camp. And still, he continued to collaborate with the Nazis, who allowed him to command his troops from within the camp. Bandera's insurgents committed mass exterminations of both Jews and Poles, killing around 70,000 civilians in the summer of 1943 alone. After the war, Bandera and his group were recruited by British intelligence and began another years-long insurgency within the Soviet Union. We even know of MI6 reports praising Bandera. One called him, quote, a professional underground worker with a terrorist background and ruthless notions about the rules of the game. It took the KGB up until 1959 to finally assassinate the guy, and in the end, the US accepted immigration requests from around 80,000 anti-communist Ukrainian nationalists. Many, if not most, were Nazi collaborators associated with the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. Now, today's neo-Nazi groups in the country view Stepan Bandera and his organization as heroes. They either try to downplay their collaboration or outright say the Nazis weren't so bad. The main neo-Nazi organizations we're talking about are Right Sector, a neo-Nazi political party whose paramilitary wing is directly descended from Bandera's Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, the Svoboda Party, widely known for its anti-Semitic and fascist views, the state-funded C-14 militia, and the Azov Battalion, an armed neo-Nazi group that is now part of the regular military of Ukraine, also follows in the legacy of Bandera. These organizations became major influences on Ukrainian politics after the 2014 Maidan coup d'etat in Kiev that was actively supported by Washington and NATO. Since then, these groups have actively pressured the government, even threatening to overthrow it back in 2016. And these are really the reasons why Donetsk and Lugansk have went to declare themselves autonomous people's republics, and they're now seeking full political and economic integration with Russia. Now, they speak Russian. They consider themselves the inheritors of the anti-fascist Soviet partisan legacy. And West Ukraine has also been blocking much of their water as well as their electricity. So naturally, they've been fighting this unwavering struggle against the Kiev government and their neo-Nazi organizations that help prop it up. Now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to go over the Azov Battalion because they're by far the most significant and they've received a lot of support from the United States. But I will make some passing comments about the other neo-Nazi organizations. Now, Azov's directly received things like anti-tank rocket launchers, light vehicles, and even field training from Washington, courtesy of all of you, the American taxpayers, right? Sergeant Ivan Kharkov from the Azov Battalion actually gave an interview to the Daily Beast where he talks about how the U.S. helped train the battalion in the field. Now, he said that they sent medics, they sent engineers, and Kharkov also mentioned that the Ukrainian diaspora has been a big help. Remember those Ukrainian collaborators who fled retribution from the USSR? Well, we're talking a lot about their descendants. It does seem, though, that Azov and Washington don't really want their relationship to be known to the public. Despite accounts like Sergeant Kharkov's story and a mountain of other evidence, the founder of Azov, Andrei Beletsky, says, quote, American Army representatives do not train and have never trained the battalion. By the way, here's an unrelated quote from Beletsky. The historic mission of our nation in this critical moment is to lead the white races of the world in a final crusade for their survival, a crusade against the Semite-led Untermenschen. When press officer Irina Ferencevich of the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine was asked whether or not the U.S. government is training the Azov battalion, she gave some sort of vague answer, not saying no, but also trying to downplay neo-Nazis in general. Her exact statement said, quote, "Our vetting systems are for human rights violations, not for ideology. Neo-Nazis, you know, can join the U.S. Army too. The battalions that are in question have been integrated as part of Ukraine's National Guard, so the idea is that they would be eligible for training." Now, technically, the U.S. banned military aid to the Azov battalion back in 2018, but like you heard from Ferencevich, it's been integrated into the Ukrainian National Guard. That's part of the Ukrainian armed forces, people who do receive supplies, armaments, and training from the U.S. government. To think that aid intended for the Ukrainian armed forces would not find itself in the hands of branches of the Ukrainian armed forces is just naive. But like I said before, there are a number of US-friendly neo-Nazi organizations in Ukraine. The Svoboda Party's leader, Oleg Tyanibok, once claimed that a, quote, Jewish Muscovite mafia was in control of Ukraine. As you can see, there are pictures of him beside former US Senator John McCain and current Senator Chris Murphy in Maidan Square. That's the same party that has nationalist indoctrination camps for young children all throughout the country. The Right Sector Party burned over 40 people alive in one of Odessa's local trade union buildings amidst the chaos of 2014. And the Western media, US and EU governments, they only legitimize the violence as part of their narrative portraying Maidan as a righteous revolution. Even the Anti-Defamation League refused to support a congressional ban on arms sales to that organization. It said, quote, "The focus should be on Russia. To me, it's unacceptable that our government not only keeps quiet about neo-Nazi violence across the Ukraine, but is actively complicit in their crimes. Washington gives platforms to these neo-Nazis to spread their ideas. In the embassy to Ukraine, in State Department-funded think tanks, U.S. supplies, weapons, and taxpayer dollars are still finding their way into the hands of these groups. The fascist threat is far from over in Ukraine. The American left should support the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics in their struggle against NATO-backed fascism, and we need to understand that in this conflict, Russia is not our enemy."
Okay. Thank you, and that was Donald Corder, and that was his very informative presentation about the crisis in Ukraine, what's really going on. Certainly different than what mainstream U.S. media would have us believe is going on there. So now, at this point, we're going to have a special comment from Charlotte, and Charlotte is a CPI activist involved in many progressive struggles, and she's going to make a special comment about our new Center for Political Innovation educational manual, which is now available. So Charlotte, go ahead.
Thank you, Caleb. Caleb has a new book out called We Are City Builders, the Center for Political Innovation Educational Manual. It is a quick yet comprehensive brush up, as well as a collection of essays from Caleb's book, City Builders and Vandals. And it discusses the history of Marxism, socialism, as well as the formation of the socialist republics in USSR, China under Mao's Communist Party, and it also features a questionnaire, so you could get together with some of your comrades and friends who are learning Marxist Leninist theory as well as methodology. And this is a great way, you know, to actually get people to think about politics and economics in a vast geopolitical sense, because right now, excuse me, and because right now we are combating the two threats to socialism and leftist activism and revolutionary struggle in America, which is first libertarianism and synthetic leftism, which you also read about in We Are City Builders, on the origins of synthetic leftism, as well as the way the CIA infiltrated anti-war activists during the late 60s and early 70s. And you can also buy Caleb, the book at on Amazon. There should be a link in the video description. So please pick up a copy, and if you want to buy in, and it also, oh yes, and it does feature essays from Albert Einstein, M.G. Olgan, and and Mao Zedong, and sorry, I'm a little throat. My throat's a little dry, but yeah. So please, if you could actually buy these in bulk, we urge you to distribute these in colleges and campuses and even in high schools if you are a SINA member, that's Students and Youth for a New America.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. So on that note,
a quick announcement.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Everybody, you guys know my program, Working Class Revolt, with David Fox, the Australian union organizer. We started our program by a study of the history of three internationals by William Z. Foster. And that was an intensive study. And we recently decided that we're going to be studying sections, some of the articles from We Are City Builders on our program. If people want to subscribe, and you can find out more about that on our next meeting, will be next Saturday, and we'll announce which sections we'll be going over. That's it.
Thank you for that. Very important announcement, Dust. I'm glad to hear that these discussions are taking place. So at this point, we want to start our Q&A to kind of close out the program. Anyone who wants to ask a question of any of our speakers. Is there anyone who has a question? Are there questions from the chat, perhaps, or are there folks that are here in the stream who want to ask a question to start off our Q&A? Ask a question of any of our speakers. Okay, so I guess Comrade Pella wants to go first with a question to start off our Q&A. Oh no, he didn't. I thought he was raising his hand there. Okay. Anyone else have a question to start off our Q&A? Anyone wanna ask a question or make a comment based on what they heard? All right. Well, I guess Max the Sax will go ahead.
I actually have a question toward Comrade Jumi. So, Comrade Jumi, you, Students and Youth for New America and Flogun are working side by side each other in DC to develop a base area within Ward 5, and to basically create a situation where the proletariat of that area can, organize themselves. So I have a question about what do you think is the critical linchpin between and what role do the suburban areas have to play along with in relation to the rural and urban and city areas within the U.S. in our revolutionary context?
Yeah, Max, that's a great question. So you mentioned Ward 5. The reason why a big chunk of our work is taking place in Ward 5 is CPUSA contacts have worked with a Brooklyn Manors tenant association. Ward 5, I mentioned, is where I'm from, and that relationship was natural. I think what's most important is to build a relationship with folks who are most path of least resistance, pretty much. Culturally, I understood that, and the role that in that coalition, working with Brooklyn Manor to help them develop the Brooklyn Manor's work has been focused on countering the gentrification that they're dealing with from the property managers, the private property owners, as well as the Ward 5 local district government. There are a lot of roles that have been delegated within that coalition. And you mentioned suburbia and their relationship to organizations based within the urban centers. Basically, one of the most important things is the alienation of resources from both the urban centers and the rural sector. You know, people who are working out in the factories or, well, there's less mining in the US, but there's still some that goes on, fracking, all of these, you know, bases of essential labor, you know, have been separated from the urban center where most of it is like served by the workers. There's a lot of service job, gig economy. You know, a car may be manufactured in the rural sector and then brought over to the urban center for those people to use for service jobs, as well as the food that, you know, takes place in the slaughterhouses and all that. The intermediate sector of suburbia gets most of those resources hoarded within smaller, you know, contingencies. You know, so having those resources sent over to what's the word I want to use? Reallocating those resources from the suburban sector to the folks who the resources have been alienated from is a big help, as well as the fact that the urban folks and the rural folk have been cut off with that intermediate sector. One great thing that will help bridge the gap between the urban and rural productive forces is by having, for lack of a better term, class traders within the more wealthy sections of suburbia, kind of, you know, living in the same vein as the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman, having people who not willing to work with the antagonistic forces of law enforcement or you know, fascist or any of the antagonists of the broad working classes within the United States. You know, so providing shelter, providing resources, and providing support, biggest things that the suburbanites can do for the urban and rural working class.
What are people's thoughts on the labor union struggle?
Hold on, I'll put you in the center there, Gavin. Gavin has got the next question here. Go ahead.
What are people's thoughts on the labor union struggle?
I'd be glad to answer. Yes, that's very interesting. I think we need to keep the slogan "out of the movement, into the masses" current. And I have some criticism of some of the comrades and more legacy organizations who have isolated themselves, you know, in the labor, deep within the labor movement, without making efforts, you know, to really mobilize the people. But at the same time, there has been amazing outpourings of people organizing new places in Amazon, down in I think it's Alabama. Just recently, majority Black workers are voting to unionize, and it's a grassroots movement of the people for workers' power. And there's been solidarity demonstrations all over the country. And I think labor unions are a very great tool that we can make material gains on the ground, win people to our cause, build power, and grow our organizations. And my comrade, David Fox, is a great example of that in Australia. He is openly a communist. He works within the union movement, the labor. You don't want to say labor because that's the bourgeois party over there. But he works within the union movement, and he uses that as a school for the revolution. At the same time, building and fighting for demands on the ground of the people. You're muted.
Questions from the chat. Michael asks, for David Cedillo, does San Angelo Solidarity integrate socialist education and organizing with mutual aid work? And if so, how? That's the question. So David, do you want to give an answer?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yes. So your question about doing corporate educating, we definitely do. This group actually started out with mostly just doing study group sessions. We started off with reading State and Revolution and just trying to get a better grasp and understanding of different socialist literature. We actually have a really big meeting coming up this Sunday that we're going to be going over the CPI manual. We're going to be going over a few sections with hopefully a large group of 7 to 10 people. So that is a very big part of what we're doing, because we feel like a lot of the liberals that rely on spontaneity and stuff like that, they don't have real ideological purpose or any real direction they feel like they're going. So that is a very integral part of what we're doing. We have all of our weekly meetings are also study guide sessions where we talk about organizing and different ways to reach out to people, and like they were saying, out of the movement and into the masses. That's what we really want to be about, because there's not a lot of movement here, so we got a lot of masses to work with. So that's what we're doing. So we're definitely trying to do that the best we can, trying to get, like, I just bought a huge old whiteboard, and we're trying to do our best to make a little commie class over here. So we're doing our best.
Caleb, you're muted.
Sorry. We have another question from the chat. Mario asks, why do business owners praise outsourcing so much, and does that weaken workers' rights? Who would like to answer that? Dust, you look like you're ready to answer that. Do you want to answer that, Dust? Or?
Can you put the question back up?
Oh, sure. 1 second.
Okay, why business owner praise outsourcing so much? Does that weaken workers' rights? Okay, why do business owners praise outsourcing? I guess they're the ones making the money with outsourcing. I think outsourcing is an interesting topic, and where I'm from, it's a source of a lot of xenophobia. People say all the jobs going over to China. China took all the jobs. And I think that's completely messed up. It is the capitalist here who decided that they wanted to move the jobs over there. It ain't the struggling people in the global South that took our jobs. It's this country and its infrastructure and its government that is promoted by the capitalists and made for capitalist profits, that doesn't care about our well-being, that doesn't care whether we have a job or not. So we shouldn't be blaming China and the global South and workers that got it worse off than us to do that. And we need solid international movements. We need to link up with the people in the global South fighting against these things. And the way to do that is stop these coups that are destroying socialist countries. That raise minimum wages, that lift people's standards of living. And first, if we can stop them coups, they won't have nowhere to go to. And then when you stop with the xenophobia and promote international solidarity.
Okay.
If you want to find out who took our jobs, don't look down, look up.
Very good. So we've got a comment from Choose Time. Choose Time says, CPI is on fire tonight. Great to see your think tank growing so strongly, all those here. Would anyone like to react to that?
Well, thank you
so much.
to Stein.
Okay.
Can I react?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we're growing. We have to get out of the movement to the masses. The youth have to be part of that. The oppressed nationalities have to be a part of it. All people within America got to be a part of this movement toward building a truly revolutionary movement within the United States, and like truly correcting the synthetic left distortion of socialism. And just red salute. That's what I say.
Very good. Now we have a super chat question from Justin Simons. He asks, open question for anyone. What are your thoughts about linking community work with international struggles for solidarity? So anyone want to answer that question? All right. So I see Jumi wants to answer that.
Oh.
Yeah. international struggle is the struggle of anti-imperialism. And if you're doing any anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, anti-fascist work, you must include anti-imperialism. Like somebody mentioned before, the whole outsourcing issue is a question of imperialism. When those jobs are outsourced, those factory jobs, those agrarian jobs, you know, they create a larger pool of unemployed masses who, you know, fall into the category of the so-called lumpen proletariat, people who have to form you know, use forms of non-traditional labor, criminalized labor in order to, you know, make a living. So it's interconnected, like the unhoused people, the incarcerated people, you know, those people are unhoused and incarcerated because of the resource exportation. Those things are inextricably, I can't speak tonight. Those things are linked. Those things are completely tied together. I'll use an example of the fact that the embargo that Cuba has been facing for, you know, on and off throughout its entire existence as a revolutionary nation. You know, solidarity with the Cuban nation could possibly lead to a strengthening of a relationship with our CP as well as theirs. You know, we have a fraternal relationship with the communist parties of the world. So long story short, they're inseparable, local, international struggle.
All right. Well, David Fox, who is an ally and worker with the CPI, and he's in Australia. He commented, when talking to working class people, start addressing the economic concerns such as work, cost of living, etc., and go from there. Anyone want to react to the comment from David Fox?
The brother that made the presentation on it, no?
Indeed, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions that folks want to speak to? Or
I would just briefly say that you know, when talking to people, you have to start with things that can be easily agreed on. If you start with anti-imperialism and solidarity with other countries, people are going to think you're crazy. So when you talk about economic issues like economic human rights and labor rights, you know, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
I was going to ask if Comrade Pella could answer, but I can give a brief answer as well. I was on an interview with my East Tennessee friend. Shout out to Holding On with Holder, Steve Holder out there, independent Catholic politician up in Appalachia. But he goes and he tells me like, don't we have to defend our country? Do we got to keep these wars? And I'm like, whose country? Look at the conditions. Look at the people out on the street. Look at the house you live in. I mean, this stuff is obvious. This is the day-to-day grind of the people all around you, and this is easy openings, especially you're from and of the community. How are you not going to talk about it? I think it's important to differentiate the them from us. When referring to an imperialism, I prefer not to say we invaded Afghanistan. I invaded Afghanistan, and I refer to we as the people, and our conditions are dwindling and going horrible. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
Oh, okay. And Michael,
Another super chat question.
Yeah, and we'll get to the super chat question after Michael gets a chance to answer the question as well.
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
Oh, well, it was about speaking about when speaking with people, raising economic concerns like work and housing and such when engaging with people.
Oh, okay. So in that respect, you got to start off small. You know, you just can't be like can't just like shove red literature down their throat at first. You have to listen for a while. Keep listening, and then ease them into, you know, your philosophy that is counter to the narrative. as far as the whole concept of like defending God bless America, that type of stuff, you gotta convey it that this country is not ran by the people. It's ran by multinational corporations that are not necessarily loyal to the United States or the economic conditions of the United States. They would rather use the public as far as their resources are concerned, to siphon them and pay for overseas resource extraction wars to benefit their own private interests. But like I said, you got to kind of segue that into there. You just can't come out there like right out front. It's got to be gradual, and it takes a good degree of time and relationship building. The biggest problem with our label as socialists is that there's a lot of good people who think that we're not good people for some odd reason. I think that has to do with decades of anti-Cold War brainwashing. But we have to go amongst the public and show the public that, we're not all that different from you. We have a slightly different interpretation of how centralization should be. I'm trying to think of the right term for it. How centralization should be relative to production and wealth redistribution. But we got to come across as people who are relatable and likable, and not just some eggheads planning for a revolution. It's just we need that human element to it, and that's how we will convey our ideas better to the public.
Now we've got a super chat question from MTFFFG. And they said, is CPI going to have official collaborations with other leftist organizations like the Communist Party USA? Well, I think it's important to be clear that the CPI is not a political party. We are not basically at this point, we're not a party. There are people involved with CPI that are with the Communist Party. There's people involved with the CPI that are with the Party of Communists. There are people involved with CPI who are part of the PSL, the Party of Socialism and Liberation. There are people involved with CPI that are in the Socialist Party. I think many CPI members are members of Democratic Socialists of America. And there are also many CPI members that are not members of any party. I myself am not a member of any political party. I've devoted myself to socialist education, but I'm not a member of any party. And that we really don't seek to compete with any existing socialist party. We are a a group that engages in socialist education primarily. If people want to be part of a party or don't want to be part of a party, that's up to them. We don't take a position on that, and all are welcome. My attitude with CPI has long been that that we shouldn't call ourselves Maoists or Trotskyists or Hojists or anarchists or social democrats or any of these things. We should study all of that, but blindly follow none of it as we figure out what will work here in the United States. And to touch on what was said earlier by Dust and by Michael, Comrade Pella, we do need to make clear our goal is not to make life worse for the American people. We see socialism as a way to save this country from the horrors of capitalism, and that leftism is not a destructive ideology; it's a constructive ideology. There we go. I guess Charlotte wanted to make a comment or say something, I guess.
Yes, it was actually related to Comrade Pella's point. It's true, we do live in a very rushed world, and that we do have a problem with managing patients. For instance, it's normal for the powers that be, the ruling class, and the mainstream organizations to be patient when it comes to global climate change. However, we're very impatient with each other and the way people learn differently than others. And when talking with working class social liberals who are not educated within any schools of socialism, or a Trump voter or any working class Republican, they're not going to get it immediately. So we all have to be patient, and because patience is definitely an undervalued virtue, although it is, again, used haphazardly, as we're very patient. And I shouldn't say our government is very patient when it comes to dealing with climate change. And darn, I was going to say something else. Actually, yes. What actually helps me, like when talking to Trump supporters, for socialist organizers, you don't have to say that you're socialist, but if you tell them that you didn't vote for Biden or that you don't like Biden, they'll actually be interested in listening to you. So give it a shot, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I think we can do one last question and then we'll have Max play us out with the Internationale, because we've hit the 2-hour mark. So does anyone want to do one last question? Is there anything in the chat before we go? Anything that someone wants to raise as our last point for tonight? Anything on people's minds? I guess I'll pick something from the chat. Something. Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. We have a question from Jumi that reads, thoughts on Zelensky's role in the Ukraine separatist conflict?
I personally don't know enough about that issue to comment on it. Is there someone here who could comment on the role of the Ukrainian president and his role in the situation in Ukraine? I really just don't know enough about it. All right. Well, I guess no one really wants to comment on the role of President Zelensky. He did play a central role in the first impeachment of Donald Trump. So we'll remember that. It's kind of interesting that he's become kind of a household name in the United States because of that. But as far as his role in Ukraine, I guess no one here really wants to comment on that. So I guess we'll conclude with Max the Sax. Will play us out with the Internationale. Before we go, I want to remind everyone to not only like and subscribe to this channel, but also check out the social media handles of everyone here. And in fact, I want to give everyone here a chance to kind of plug their social media handles. I'll put us all like this, and we can go around and plug our Twitter handles and social media accounts so people can follow us if you want to do that. So go ahead before we go, and then we'll have Max play us out. Does anyone want to give their social media handles, YouTube, Twitter, etc.? Go ahead.
I'll go first then. You could follow me on Instagram at just call me Shar with underscore in every in between word. Just underscore Shar underscore. Just call me Shar, and all the letter words in between have an underscore. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Darlene Sharshar. That's CHARCHAR.
Okay.
Yeah, go online, search Gavin Lockard, that's my name, and search Students and Youth for a New America. I know it's a little long, and you'll find everything you need. Twitter, Facebook, we got them all.
You can find me on Facebook as Pella Libertas. That's my name. Red Statue of Liberty icon. Twitter, well, you know me as the Red Illuminati on Twitter.
Ooh, okay.
Actually, no, that's not my Twitter account. That's my YouTube account. I'm not telling you the name of my Twitter account.
Okay.
Red Illuminati is my YouTube account.
Okay. Very good. Anyone
Twitter
else?
is confidential.
Anyone else want to plug their social media?
Yeah, Matt's no longer with us. I just want to give a quick shout out to the comrades at Telehagwire, and they're actually live right now on their Facebook page, Telehagwire with Comrade Ramiro. If people want to go there afterwards, and you can find me on YouTube. Just Google Dust James Anti-Imperialist America. It'll bring up some of my older videos, and I'm also on Facebook. The page Anti-Imperialist America.
All right. Does anyone else want to plug their social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just Okay.
Okay, I'll go quick. Yeah, you can find me at David Cedillo on Facebook and San Angelo Solidarity on Facebook and Solidarity Said on YouTube. You can go ahead, brother.
Yeah, DC Communist, that's both on Twitter and Instagram. I posted those in the chat as far as spelling. And I'll also post the education, organization that we work with. Claudia Jones School for Political Education has both a YouTube as well as social media, including Twitter and Instagram. I'll post that in the comments.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess we'll have Max, you can plug your social media and then you can play it out.
Students and Youth for New America has the Beltway branch if you want to follow the specific developments of the DC branch of SINA. At Students Beltway with a capital S and then a capital B, and you'll find us right there. And for Instagram, just SINA as you see it on screen, without the parentheses. SINA and then Beltway on Instagram, and you should find us. And yeah, okay, time to play.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Best wishes and have a good evening.